everyone, welcome back to the Roker Rapport. This week, in the absence of Sunderland action, we're focusing on the relegation running, so there's a lot of points to be had, certainly, to go around. It's very, very tight at the bottom. I mean, joining me today, we've got the usual suspects. We've got Gav. How you doing, buddy?
Very well, very well. No Sunderland game to ruin me weekend, so...
nothing depressing this weekend.
Pretty much, aye.
We've got James as well. How you doing, James?
I'm alright, mate. I'm alright.
Alright, not too bad. Tom, what about you, buddy?
Not too bad, mate.
Not too bad. What about you, Walshy? You still hanging?
Yeah, I'm good.
Fair enough. Right, well, yeah, that's it. This is that time of the year, really, again for us. It's the sort of time that we start glancing left and right at the teams in and around the bottom of the table and sort of with like an air of desperation, really hoping that they fail so that we can somehow use them to leapfrog our way unaccountably up the table. It's fair to say that we've still got the proverbial mountain to climb as a team, as a club, but without doubt, it's very close. As I say, there's a lot to be had. I mean, you've got to consider that there's 10 games left thereabouts for most teams. You're looking at like a potential of 30 points. I mean, when you consider that the gap between 20th, where we are, and 12th is 12 points. So there's a lot to play for, certainly a lot to play for. Not very much time to play it in. But so we'll start off with what we've got. We're going to run through all of the teams, basically, that we think are going to be involved in the relegation scrap. They might go down, you'll get some predictions. And we'll start ourselves off with Middlesbrough. So, Walshy, you've been doing some research on Middlesbrough. What do you make of their chances?
They're in a world of trouble. They I would argue that they're in a worse position than we are at the moment. They've not won in 10 games. They can't score goals. I mean, defensively they're not too bad. I mean, they don't really lose that many games. I mean, compared to the rest of the bottom 7, they've lost the least. But they keep getting bogged down in a lot of 0-0 draws, and they're not scoring. They've got Negredo's the top goal scorer with 6, but he's in and out of the team. I mean, he didn't play in the cup against Man City on Saturday. I don't know whether that's just case because of the cup match and you're resting him for the bigger games to come. But the one underneath that's Stuani with 4 and Rudiger Stedt, who they bought. I don't really know why they bought him because he didn't really seem to be a player that fit in with their style of football. But he hasn't scored well in the league, and he hobbled off on Saturday with I think it was a hamstring, so he's going to be out for a few weeks. They've got some pretty big games coming up, which probably will define their season. They've got Swansea, Hull, and Burnley. Swansea and Hull away, and Burnley at home, and then of course they play us at some point. So if they come out of that with a decent points total, then they could be all right. But I just don't see where they're going to score goals. I don't know, there's not that much creativity in that team, and they just can't finish the chances. And they're starting to, Karanka is very, stuck in his ways. It's quite defensive football, and the fans are starting to turn on him as well.
I mean, sorry, cut in there, but is it fair to say that their opinion of Karanka's sort of, it's changed since they came up, since he brought them up?
Yeah, well, Karanka's weird because you come with the conception if you come from Real Madrid, you're going to be free-flowing football and all that, but it's not. It's very defensive-minded, and they just don't take the chances, or they haven't got the quality of finishes. Negredo is a very good player, but like we saw when he played for City, he scores goals in patches as opposed to throughout the season, and that's why us having Defoe, at least we know he's probably going to take his chances when they come to him. But they're really struggling, and if they don't come out of that little trio of games, Swansea, Hull, and Burnley, then they're going to have real trouble, because then it's they've got to play Chelsea and Liverpool both away in the last 3 games of the season. So yeah, if I was a Middlesbrough fan, I'd be pretty worried.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's fair enough to say. I mean, we've played them, obviously. That didn't go entirely to plan, obviously. That wasn't a good day, and so soon in the season as well. What do you make of, you say you wouldn't be happy, sort of thing. What do you make of the transfers? Do you think that's made any sort of difference? Do you think they made the right sort of moves in the transfer market?
Well, when they were buying players in the summer, the players that we were getting, I thought these were good players like Deroon and Traore from I think he came from Aston Villa, and then they had this Victor Fisher, which I thought, well, he's every football manager, He's a wonder kid on that, but he's not really settled, and he doesn't play much. And then they brought in Bamford and Gestede. Bamford, I don't know why they brought him, because again, he's not playing. And Gestede's not the real type of player for them. I mean, when we played him early in the season, I thought that was ironically, it was one of our better games. And, like, even then you thought, this Middlesbrough team, they're not that great. And they scored, one of the goals was an absolute pot shot screamer.
Yeah, the Stuani goal was an absolute world.
Yeah.
It was something that he's never scored another one of them in his career.
No, I didn't see that one coming at all.
And it always happens against us when that happens. But then you're worried for them then, because they had quite a few chances, weren't putting them away, and then we were getting at them quite at will, really, but obviously because us were 2-0 down at half time and the game's kind of dead. But that Sunderland, the derby in inverted commas, like, if that's towards the end of April, that's going to be A, horrible, and B, it's probably going to be a draw, which will help no one. It'll probably send us both down. If I was a Middlesbrough fan, I'd be really worried, because, and also I don't think the manager's going to change. I think they've left it a bit too late. I couldn't see them binning him off now, because he's got a huge backroom staff and all these different coaches and all that, so they have to get rid of the whole lot and then bring in, I don't know, Pardew to save them for a couple of weeks. That'd be good, or I don't know. So yeah, Middlesbrough knackered.
In a way, though, you got to say.
Go on, mate. If you look at like the injuries, and obviously we've got so many people that come back, and we've actually got quite a few key players to come back. You look at who like Borough have got out injured at the moment, and there's no one really there who's going to come back in and make a massive difference. I just don't think they'll score enough goals. I think they'll go down myself. Like I just don't think there's enough creativity or goals in that squad at all.
So, what would your prediction be for them?
Relegation.
Relegation. So you think it's up and straight back down again, basically. No particular number though. Definitely going in the bottom three.
I think we'll finish above them.
Ooh.
I think they'll finish bottom.
That's an interesting one.
And we'll finish not bottom.
Not bottom. Marginally better.
Isn't the thing with Borough, though, I always feel like, looking at that squad, and you talked about Gestede, I feel like they bought him because, well, maybe they did think he would bring some firepower and some goals that they need, but in a way, him and Bamford are going to be a kind of good strike force next year. And I don't think they spent absolutely ridiculous sums of money, in all honesty. I think Gibson's just been smart, as per usual, and they've come up, and the money that they're going to get this season is going to give them a great platform to build from in the future. And I'm not sure that they 100% thought that they were going to stay up and do fantastic. I feel like they'll use the money well, go down, regroup, and possibly go from strength to strength. I mean, Burnley did it a few years ago, invested the Premier League money wisely. I really think Borough look at it the same way and think we're not going to spend above our means. I agree they'll go down, but I think they'll be in a pretty good position when they go down. I don't think there's going to be a fire sale like we might witness in the summer. I really don't. So, in a way, I do think they're going to go down, but I think like they're pretty well prepared for it, in all honesty.
Do you not think that the amount of money they spent to actually get up in the first place? They spent a shitload last year. They spent a shitload last year. Like Jordan Rhodes and down. They spent a lot on just getting down in there. And if that was the plan, that they weren't going to compete in the Premier League, then that's just a complete waste of money on all those Championship players to get them there in the first place. I don't think they've been planning to get relegated. They're just not very good.
You don't think, though, players like Gestede and obviously the other guy that's signed up front, Bamford, they replaced David Nugent and they replaced Jordan Rhodes, who, whilst they might not be Premier League strikers anymore, are goal scorers, and that's maybe kind of something I can't get my head round. Gestede, not a goal scoring striker. Bamford, other than his little loan spell at Borough in the Championship a few years ago, never scored goals. And it just that always struck me as weird that those were the two strikers they thought could replace those two players in the squad. And obviously, I'm talking about these aren't Premier League strikers anymore, but at the same time, they can still add something to that squad, and you're kind of seeing it with other teams like Burnley. I mean, how many of Burnley's players would you say were Premier League players, but they're still able to add something? And in that sense, I think David Nugent, even for the rest of the season, would have been far more valuable to a team than spending $8 million on Gusted. I mean, Villa must have been rubbing their hands together when that offer came in, because he's never ever a Premier League striker as long as I've got a hole in my arse. He's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Professional stuff. Nothing but. Right, so we're all in sort of agreement there that Middlesbrough are going down, but they're ultimately well prepared for it, and they're not going to basically crash and burn or anything like that. Some might even say that they sort of expected it beforehand. I suppose that's really indicative of great planning, isn't it? That's good club ownership, I suppose, when you don't throw all your eggs in one basket, although they did spend a lot of money. All right, well, moving on and slightly up the table, we're talking about Hull. Jim, what do you make of Hull's chances?
Obviously, they're much more improved now under Marco Silva. He's very, very well liked. They brought in some decent players. In January, they brought in 10 players since Marco Silva came in. People like Niasse looks decent. I mean, he was awful at Everton, but he seems to have got a few goals. And looking at what Hull fans think, he seems to be getting their best out of Hernandez. Actually, thinking about those two up front, you think the fact that there's two up there causing trouble, they're giving each other a bit more space, and it's something that we certainly don't have. They have massive injury problems. They've overtaken us finally at top of the injury league. And they've got people like, Michael Dawson out for a couple of months. They've got Mbakani, who's very poor, but, he's a big lump and he's up there, isn't he? Will Keane, he's out. There's a few others who, could, if they could get them back for the run-in, as it were, they might be in a bit better shape. I mean, their form at home is very decent. I mean, they haven't lost at home since December. They've been really, really solid. And it's in stark contrast away, in which they've only won one all year. And that was their opening away fixture away at Swansea. And I just think, looking at Hull's games that are coming up, they've got West Ham, they've got Borough, they've got Watford, they've got Sunderland, and they've got Spurs all at home. Considering they haven't lost since December, if they can keep a similar run of form going, I mean, they're probably going to need 12 points or something from their home games, because it doesn't look like they're getting anything away from home if they want to stay up. When you look at the away form in particular, they're shipping a lot of goals. Three on average, 3.5 a game at times. They don't score that many goals. They seem to be one of these teams that, certainly under Marco Silva, they've grown into games more. They score goals a lot more in the second half of games. But looking at like their key players, I just had a quick look on one of the Premier League and look at like who their top goal scorer, assists and all that. And Robert Snodgrass is still their top goal scorer, top assists, top shots, top key passes. I mean, he's been gone since the start of January. So, you'd have to hope that no one in their team will step up to his kind of level. Tom Huddleston's obviously a really, really key player for them. I think they might go. I think they've probably got they've got a much better chance now with Marco Silva at the helm than they did previously. I think he seems a really decent manager. He seems to have got them playing. They seem, especially at home, they seem to be like quite organised. They press high. A couple of the lads they brought in, I think Markovic looks a decent player. He looked awful for Liverpool, but he's got a bit of pace. He's got something about him. They brought in Alfred and Dye. We know what he's like. I mean, he's not the most talented of footballers, but he's a big lad in the middle, and he's someone we crying out for. And then they've got this Niasse, he was completely in the cold at Everton and seems to have really come into his own.
Perversely with Hull, I in a weird way, I'm quite happy that they're doing quite well after the furore of Marco Silva getting it. And Paul Merson and Phil Thompson going on that dreadful rant, like, of how English managers are getting overlooked. And they're like, what does Marco Silva know about the Premier League, and I could win the Greek League? And it's, in a way, it's quite good that, like, because Hull were done before he came in. They had Mike Phelan, who he didn't have a clue how to get this team playing. And then Silva's come in, he's managed to get these players in. It's just a ragtag collection of random players from all over the world. But he's getting them playing, he's getting them solid, and they're doing the things that you need to do when you're down there. It's just win your home games and get what you can away from home.
Exactly right. And I was actually very surprised that they gave Mike Phelan the job full time anyway. I mean, he genuinely had about 2 or 3 good results, and then they just kind of jumped on it and thought, well, he's best thing since sliced bread. Let's give him the job, and they completely dropped off a cliff after that. You know, they've been absolutely dire. You know, conceding 6 at Bournemouth, 5 at Liverpool. I mean, we put 3 past them. You know, that says a lot, doesn't it?
That's true enough, isn't it? Yeah.
Each of you scored twice. There's a lot, doesn't it?
That feels like years ago, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
It does, Christ. I mean, so what would you say? Are you saying down, or what's a prediction?
To be honest, I know we'll do some predictions at the end. I think they probably will go down, but I think depending on the next few home games. I mean, when going through some of the predictions, I had us to get a point away. You know, but if they can beat us and they can beat some of the other teams around us, they could stay up. They certainly look a much better outfit than they did earlier on in the season. I think of all the teams that are down there, I kind of worry about them in terms of overtaking us the most. You know.
So
you've got to feel nervous. If you're a Hull fan, you must be terrified. You've got an owner who just seems like a complete moron, in all honesty. You have a stadium that you share with a rugby league team who play the night before your Premier League game, which in turn really hinders any chance. I get they won the game, but it's going to come and haunt them in the end if the pitch is constantly cut up and a poor surface to play on.
Well, they've not lost at home since December. I mean, it must work. I mean, you should get the lads in.
But I mean, like...
Rugby seasons are not on. It's only just come back.
It's a big bit of news. It's rugby league. They share the stadium with one of the Hull teams. And I honestly see that hurting them in the long run. And not necessarily just because of the state of the pitch, but, you know, if you're a Premier League team and your owner's trying to change your name and you're sharing a pitch with a rugby team, something's going wrong at your club. Like something has to.
I'm really not a fan. They're just tin pot. I really do. I'm not a fan of them. Look at like their all-time Premier League leading goal scorer is Jelavic. I mean, he only played for them for a year. I really hope they go down, predominantly because I can't stand Al Mohammadi. He's the biggest diver I think we've all ever seen.
The thing you've got to be worried for. I mean, we're in a precarious position financially, and you know, wondering what's going to happen to our club. What is going to happen to Hull when they go down, though? Nobody wants to see. As much as I agree, I do think they're a little bit. I hate the word tin pot, but I agree. You got to you worry for them as like fellow football fans. They could just literally go off the face of the earth.
Just slide away.
I don't see anything good coming from this season in them at all. I do think they'll go down. And I really worry for them because it's nice to have some northern teams in the Premier League, and I really worry about Hull.
Well, they're 1 point off Palace in 17, but they do have the worst goal difference in the league. They're on minus 28, we've got minus 26. Swansea are on minus 25. I think, I'm sure we'll come to it, but I think a lot of this all hinders on can Big Sam keep Palace's mini run and mini revival going?
Moving into that, yeah, absolutely. Certainly, I'll cover Palace. I think they've been through. For me, they're a mixed bag. Palace. I think when you consider the sort of the quality on paper that they've brought in, and the players that they actually have anyway, they have a real capacity, Palace. They have potential. Do you know what I mean? They've never struck me as a team that should be less than mid-table. Do you know what I mean? I've never got that feel from them. I don't think they're a tin pot club or anything like that. I think they're a big club, and they're certainly the players they've got now. I mean, they've got some serious problems with injuries, and have had really throughout most of the season. Their owners as well, then a lot of the fan base, they're not particularly happy about them. There's that whole thing of American owners coming in, you know what I mean, they injected a rather large amount of money immediately, and whether or not that's actually had a positive or a negative effect in the long run, whether it was spent wisely initially. I mean, right now you've got Benteke injured, with no date on when he's going to return. So you're basically ruling out what most people would argue is one of your strongest assets, without a doubt. And when you look at that, actually, the forward options they've had available, I mean, Loic Remy, not a world beater by any means, but certainly knows his way around. Do you know what I mean? Certainly a capable forward, capable footballer at least. Connor Wickham, obviously they took from us. I mean, we pretty much bit their hands off at that. Do you know what I mean? Because Wickham, bless him, had a few good games for us. I mean, he sort of did a job, but he played an interesting role, really, falling down when you're like 6'2" and you must weigh about 200 pounds, and you've got a tiny little bloke jumping on you from behind. It's like, as soon as there's any contact with his shoulder, he goes down. Won us an incredible amount of free kicks, I thought. Certainly drew many fouls that I didn't think we deserved. But when he went, what was it, 10 million we sold him for? Was that right? Did we get rid of Wickham for 10 million?
It was 8.
Was it 8 million? Or was it something? Either way, it was good money.
Unbelievable.
Good money.
I mean, we've got about 20 odd million quid from getting from Palace.
Well, this is it, yeah, moving on to that as well. You got Patrick Van Aanholt as well. I mean, so before I focus too much on the transfers, obviously the big news story for Palace and whether or not they could actually stay up was Sam Allardyce. Now, the trouble with Sam Allardyce, I mean, I certainly can't sit here and argue that he's not the sort of manager you want in that sort of scenario. A point has been made that in reality, Allardyce, he's come into clubs that are actually wallowing. He's only done it a couple of times in his career. Do you know what I mean? For the majority of his career, you could argue that, yes, this is because of his steady management. He's been dealing with mid-table clubs and things like that. People or teams that wouldn't necessarily be struggling with relegation, whether he was there or not. Do you know what I mean? So this whole idea of him as a firefighter, it's untested. Certainly he's a stable head and a manager that you want because of his connections, because of his unique brand of charisma. He's someone who can do that job for you, but whether or not he's actually the man to turn to when everything's going south and it looks like you're never going to make it out of there, Allardyce isn't necessarily that manager. And I think what was expected of him, the expectations that came with that, certainly after Allardyce kept us up and had a massive hand in that, I think it's sort of like disillusions, really. It's led to a disillusionment from the fans because he certainly hasn't had the best of terms so far with Palace. I mean, yeah, recently they had back-to-back wins, do you know what I mean, against Middlesbrough, funnily enough, and West Brom. But before that, I mean, from December, they took 5 points from 10 games. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't looking good for them then at all. I mean, injuries aside as well, when you look at players like Townsend, they brought in, he's no spring chicken, and he's what am I looking for? He runs hot and cold. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, he can be a great player, he can be a great asset on his day. He isn't necessarily the sort of player that I would absolutely go for. Fair enough, it might have been shrewd in a business sense, but it's not the sort of team that you're looking at and thinking, oh well, these are going to turn it around for us. I mean, they took Tompkins from West Ham. For me, when he was at West Ham, not the season he left, but the season before that, he was a great player, and they wouldn't have wanted rid of him. He gradually was phased out by Winston Reid, and Collins was still a solid defender anyway while he was there. I mean, he obviously operated at right back sometimes as well, or mostly between right back and centre back, and he got replaced by, Byram, I think they took from Leeds. So he was certainly a good defender, but since he's come into the side, he hasn't looked at all on board with whatever Allardyce's defensive strategy is. I don't know if it's because he needs that extra experience beside him or that extra talent beside him in defence, But he hasn't turned out to be what they wanted, and it certainly hasn't stopped them leaking goals. And then we move on to Patrick Van Aanholt, which obviously was the best 14 million, arguably the best 14 million Sunderland have ever earned. And absolutely not what they needed. Do you know what I mean? I can totally understand why Allardyce would go for someone to link up that play and someone with attacking intent. Obviously someone he knew, someone he's worked with, but also someone who's manager. Do they share the same manager? Was that thing? I'm not sure if they share the same manager, but he knows the manager very well. And that's a big concern with Allardyce when he moves into a new job and you offer him a lot of money. Because while he may know some very good players, he might know some very capable players, or certainly know some people who know those players and can get them in. It isn't always cut and dried, it isn't always that simple. And I think certainly with Patrick Van Aanholt, it was more like a luxury player. I don't feel like that was the sort of player certainly not the sort of defender that they needed. And as it turns out, he's injured currently anyway, so that's not good for them. But yeah, for me, from what I've seen of Crystal Palace recently, obviously we thrashed them 4-0. Do you know what I mean? That was arguably one of the happiest times that we've had this season, I think we could say. We could all probably agree on that. I don't think that they've got enough in the box to actually pull themselves out of it. I think that it might be the first time that Allardyce sees this newly tested, this sort of saviour role, like really go down the pan. I can see that happening. I don't see them making their way out of this.
I think Crystal Palace should have been relegated on the spot when they conceded 4 to us. Concede 4 at home to Sunderland, relegated on the spot.
You're out.
I'm looking at their fixtures, and I would argue they've probably got the hardest running of all the teams down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really do like.
Yeah, they've got Spurs coming up next. Then they play Watford at home, which could go either way. But then they've got games away at Chelsea, then Southampton, Arsenal at home. They play Leicester, and obviously we're going to move on to Leicester later. But the way they're playing at the minute, you never know.
Got Man U and Man City as well, haven't they?
Yeah, Liverpool. They play Man City. They play Man U, and then they've got Burnley and Hull at home. But you look at the quality of the teams that they've got to play coming up, and it just makes you wonder whether a heavy loss against Spurs and then maybe not getting. Really they need to beat Watford, because after that they're running through it. And obviously we've seen in recent weeks that the teams around us are picking up points, and if that continues and Palace can't get the wins they need, because they are still right in it. And if they can't get the wins they need in the next 4 or 5 weeks, they're going to be, down there right to the last couple of days. And when you see who they're playing in the final week of the season, away at Man U at Old Trafford, I agree with you, Damon. Actually, I think that this could well be the first time Allardyce relegates a team, because although they were able to beat West Brom in the last game, which fair play, West Brom are a decent team. If you look beyond that and you see who they have left to play, I don't think they've got enough quality all over the pitch really to pick up shot wins against big teams. A bit like we haven't. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of luxury players who I wouldn't say were prepared to graft and work hard for each other. And I think ultimately that's probably what will send them down. I would probably maybe tip them for the final day to be in amongst it.
Oh, the scenes though, if Patrick Van Aanholt gets relegated and we stay up. Do you know what I mean? I love seeing that. It's becoming, it'd be so sweet. So we're moving on anyway. So that's what we're making of Crystal Palace again. It's not looking great for many teams right now in this relegation battle. It really is tight, isn't it? I think just talking about it really it hits home just how close it is right now. Do you know what I mean? The difference is staggering. Or rather, it's not staggering. It's very small. So we're moving on anyway. What have we got next then? I suppose we should go to Swansea. Tom, you've been thinking about Swansea. What are you seeing and understanding and hearing?
I'm seeing and understanding a lot. I think Swansea, in all honesty, have done a Sunderland this year. The chairmen, the owners, who the fans are also in a bit of a tussle with. They got rid of Guidolin, replaced him with Brad Bobley, and he was an absolute train wreck, in all honesty. It's never going to work. I don't know why they thought it would. I mean, fellow countrymen, maybe they knew him. I don't know, but absolute car crash. They brought in Paul Clement, which, and this is funny because as we're talking now, Steve McLaren's just been sacked by Derby. and I never knew why Derby went and sacked Clement. And I know, like, if a Derby fan listens, highly unlikely, they'll talk about, oh, well, results just kind of trailed off and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they had like a 42% win ratio. They only lost 7 games in the time he was in charge. And he's come into Swansea and he's been a breath of fresh air. Like I say, that's normally what we do. We get to the point where the owner says, right, enough's enough. I need something that's going to give us the shot in the arm that keeps us up. They've done it, and they've done it fantastically. I wasn't really sure, and I don't think many people were, if he would have been a success. But he comes in early January, and they've got 5 wins and 5 defeats. They're not drawing any games. They're either winning or losing. But it's been such a remarkable turnaround for them. You know, to beat Crystal Palace was obviously a real spark that started the fire of revival. But then to beat teams like Liverpool and Southampton in consecutive games suggests that Clement is doing something very right from the off. And it also suggests that there's enough quality players in that team that they can stay up. Llorente went off with a dead leg, thanks to the whole pitch, allegedly. But he scored 11 goals this season. Sigurdsson has scored 8 in the league. Leroy first scored 6. So you've got 3 players there who you can not rely on as such, but you can look at in times of need and think, okay, there's a creative outlet there that's going to get us a goal. Alfie Mawson has been superb, which makes it kind of difficult as a Sunderland fan who are allegedly really close to signing. It's difficult to see him doing so well there. Sigurdsson, with regards to assists as well, he has 11 assists. So within like 20 goals, in fact, they've only scored 36 goals. Sigurdsson is directly involved in 20 of them. So to have a player like that, how can you not be? You've got someone like Sigurdsson, you've got Llorente who's found some form, and then you look at the transfers who Clement brought in. And to me, this is where Swansea, obviously they pulled the trigger on Brad Bobley, and they've brought in Paul Clement. But his transfer policy when he came has been superb. He brought in Luciano Narsing, who has a couple of assists already, for 4 million. It's highly rated out of the Eredivisie. He brought in Martin Olsen for 4 million. And this just boggles my mind as a Sunderland fan when apparently we're after Swansea's left-back, Neil Taylor, and they bring in a different left-back and can sign Taylor at the bench, and he didn't want to come to us, which blows my mind. They brought in Tom Carroll for just under 5 million, and then they brought Jordan Ayew in for 5. They haven't sort of emptied the piggy bank, so to speak, to bring in those players. They seem to me have spent really wisely. Carroll is honestly a fantastic player. What he does for that team is superb. You know, he keeps the ball moving, he gets it around the pitch, he's dangerous on it, he's looking for people. If you can give someone like him, if you can combine someone with him, with Gylfi Sigurdsson in the team and Leroy Fer, you have such an energetic midfield. And, you know, really the only place that they struggle is what happens if Llorente gets injured. Say Llorente does pick up an injury, I think some eyebrows will be raised as to whether they have enough about them. But right now, I mean, they're 3 points clear of relegation. And I really, really, really don't see them getting dragged into the dogfight, in all honesty. I really don't. They have a decent set of games coming up. They've got Bournemouth away, Borough home. They've got to play West Ham, Watford, Stoke, us, and West Brom. So I think they've got a canny running, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I think that they'll pick up more than enough points to see them safe. You know, I say that now and I bet they go down bottom. But I genuinely do think they have enough about them, and sort of the signs have been positive largely from Clement's reign that I think they'll stay up, in all honesty.
Yeah, they'll get 10 points from 10 games on there. That's pretty much what they need. I'd say they're out of it now. Unfortunately, they've had such a massive bounce since Clement came in, and a lot of it is, as you said, down to having a class striker in Llorente. I mean, he went off at the weekend, didn't he? But I think it's just a dead leg or something. I don't think. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not going to be lengthy.
Well, they've got Ki Sung-Young coming back in as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love a player like that. I mean, he was before he obviously went off the boil, he's such a classy footballer, and when you got Sigurdsson, they'll be absolutely fine.
I think I was slagging off Llorente as well just before the match. He came on and scored against us. I was like, nah, it'll be fine. He's useless, man. He's past his prime. Wasn't it a brace or something as well? Christ.
Yeah.
Good times. Well, yeah. So, okay, I would actually completely agree with you there, Tom. You've given a convincing argument as to why they might stay up. Let's hope some Swansea fans listen to this and take heart. Moving now on to Leicester, the league champions. Now, this is an interesting one, obviously, because they are just that. But I mean, how quick is that fall from grace, Gav?
Amazing, isn't it? But to be honest, I think you're probably talking about a totally different Leicester to the one we've seen for much of this season. I think much of what they do beyond today, as we speak, depends upon how well they play against Sevilla midweek. Because when they play Sevilla on Tuesday, obviously some people will be listening to this after the fact, and bearing in mind how that result goes, it changes everything. I think when you look at the fixtures they've got left for the rest of the season, they've got a difficult run. They've got a real difficult run. They've got games against, away to Everton. They're away to Manchester City, and they've got quite a lot of games against teams around them. So you're kind of looking in the mid-table. West Ham and Stoke coming up are two big games for them because, if they can get 6 points from that, they're pretty much safe. In the same way we're talking about Swansea before. Swansea are inches from safety, really, when you look at how well they're playing now under the new manager. It's kind of the same for Leicester. Craig Shakespeare, no idea really what the bloke's capable of. But he has been able to get them 2 wins in the last 2 games. So if they can carry that form on, even beat Sevilla and go into the West Ham game with confidence, they have West Ham away, win that game, say they get something from the Stoke game at home, which you imagine they would, they then play us. And to be honest, if they go into that game in form at their ground, I would suggest that we would be able to get anything from that either, because Leicester are a curious team on that they've been able to win the league with pretty much the same squad they've got now, give or take. Obviously, they lost Kante, who has been a massive loss. I think if you keep him in that team this season, you would be talking about a team hanging around the bottom 10 of the bottom half of the top 10. 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that. They would be up there. I think he's been that much of a loss that they kind of haven't. They've tried to replace him. They've signed a couple of central midfield players who are decent players, but they're not Kante. Kante is quality. So yeah, looking ahead, I think everything hinges on the Champions League. If they do well in that, they kind of have to weigh it up, don't they? Is that the priority, or is staying in the Premier League the priority? I think for Craig Shakespeare, staying in the Premier League definitely is, because he's been given a job to at least carry on what he started. They're on 27, which is obviously what Swansea are on, and we're talking about Swansea being pretty much safe, so it would be unfair not to look at Leicester in the same vein. However, I did speak before about how important the next few games are in terms of winning them. If they lose them, then everything totally changes, obviously, because then they play us, and God knows what form we'll be in going into that. But then they have away games at Everton and Palace. They aren't easy to play either, and then Spurs. So, yeah, it's an odd one to call this. I think out of all the teams down there, they're probably the most unpredictable. I think you can kind of call one way or the other what you think on pretty much every team down the bottom. Leicester are a different kettle of fish, just because of how recently they've changed their manager, really, and what they've got coming up. But for me, I think they're probably going to be safe. I think, yeah, safety, maybe a couple of games spare as well.
Maybe. I mean, it'd be interesting if they get knocked out against Sevilla, and then if they were to then lose the next couple, whether their heads would drop again, or whether this new bounce would then disappear, because they have been so dire for the majority of the season with such quality players. I do wonder that will players like Mahrez, is he up for the battle? We just have to. Really, what we need is them to crash out the Champions League, and then maybe lose a couple off the back of that, and then maybe they get dragged back into it, because I don't think any of us can say with any certainty that Craig Shakespeare's a great manager or coach, because, he's been appointed until the summer now, hasn't he? But, as Gav said, he's such an unknown quantity. Who bloody knows, really? I'd
love Leicester to go down, though. The way
me too.
The way the players have, I don't know if treat is the right word, but the way the players didn't perform for Ranieri. And, just Jamie Vardy, for example, with the whole miles ran per game stat that came out the other week, and he'd been seriously just not trying this season for whatever reason. And then, Ranieri goes, and for what he's done for that club, it's disgusting in my opinion, the way that the players reacted this season to whatever it is he wanted to try and do again. It's been awful in my opinion.
Yeah, it was absolutely, it's just confusing, I think, more than, I want to say it was awful. Everyone's got their opinion on it, but there's so little information out there about exactly why this was happening. I mean, I said, when they, obviously immediately after leaving Shakespeare's first game in charge, and I have no doubt it's got nothing to do with him as a manager, and they came storming out the blocks. That was a fantastic game for them. That performance was like what you expected from league champions. Do you know what I mean? They looked like they'd never been away, sort of thing. But how angry would you have been then, as a Leicester fan, to see that? Do you know what I mean? And it made me think, like, I really hope Ranieri's not watching this. Do you know what I mean? I can picture like a single solitary tear roll down his cheek. It's like, you bastards. His
farewell note was just like, it was heartbreaking. Like, every football fan read it and thought, this is just like the death of such a great story.
Yeah.
Basically just backstabbed him. Because when, as Tom said, when Vardy was asked that question, they said to him, why haven't you been trying as hard? And I think he even said, look, no, we've been trying as hard. Then they chucked the stats in his face and he just looked like a rabbit in headlights. Okay.
Oh, haven't I?
Got it there. Yeah.
All right, well, fair enough. So Leicester, anybody's game, really, anybody's bet. Well, it being so tight, as I said, at the bottom of the table, we could theoretically and mathematically, we could technically take this all the way to 9th place. We won't do that because that's a bit silly and highly unlikely to happen. However, we still have the likes of Bournemouth, Watford and Burnley. Burnley, all importantly, I suppose, for us, because they'll be the next match we play. But we will give that a quick rundown. And I mean, anybody got any ideas really about what's out of those three? Do we see any of them getting dragged right down?
I've done a couple of these. I've done a couple of these points prediction things, and I think if Bournemouth might just have Bournemouth are the only one I see who possibly could get dragged in, but I think they've got about 5 points too many. I can't see them. They're already on 30. A couple of wins and they're probably safe because of their goal difference. So, I think they'll be safe, but they've been on a pretty rotten run of form. I mean, they won their last game, but before that, and I think they hadn't won in 10 or 12 games or something.
Well, I mean, I watched their last game. I was around my mate's house to watch the West Ham match, and it was when you consider that they missed 2 penalties and they still managed to win that game 3-2. It wasn't for lack of ability. Do you know what I mean? They seemed really on foot. I mean, West Ham certainly they're not the best team in the world. They're currently not on a fantastic run of form either, in particular, but. Yeah, they looked up for it, Bournemouth. They certainly looked up for it. Both halves, they looked up for it. Every player looked up for it. And I think when you consider who they have, like the sort of ability they can call upon, do you know what I mean? I don't think I can't see them going down. Not with that sort of fight. They look to me on Saturday. They look like we do, or we usually do at this time of year, every season. Do you know what I mean? For the last few seasons, but yeah, I didn't see a team that looked like it was going to drop its head. Do you know what I mean? When a goal was conceded or anything like that, they look like they have fight in them.
I would say it's uncharacteristic of what the run they've been on. Maybe this will be the turning point for them, but as I said, they have been pretty shit, really. For quite some time. I mean, we beat them. I mean,
is that just going to be the bar that we set everything for now?
If we beat them, then they're obviously crap.
Instantly relegated. Lose out to Sunderland, instantly relegated.
We need to win 3 games. That's it.
Just one more.
Yeah, so we've got Bournemouth. All right, so not necessarily going to go down, going to stay. What about Watford? Gav, what do you make of Watford?
Another weird team on the. I probably couldn't even tell you half the players that play for them. I watch them sometimes and I'm like, who's he? Like, no idea. Some random Spanish or French player. Like, who are these guys? But they don't seem to struggle, do they? Which is the most important thing. I don't know how well Caboose actually played for them, but the hole he left when he left us, it was major. And I kind of wonder, how much of an impact he's had. If he's been anywhere near as good as he was for us, then I can kind of see why they haven't struggled, because he's a class defender, really. But again, we have those to play as well. They face Leicester towards the end of the season, which I think could be probably the biggest game for Leicester, because I do predict that they'll pick up a couple of wins before then. But by the time they play Watford, they're probably really going to need a win to either survive or, decide whether they're going to go down the last couple of games, because Manchester City and Bournemouth are the games after that. So I think Watford will be fine. I think Watford will hang in the middle of the table and just, crack on. The kind of this year's Stoke, Stoke just went around the middle. That's what Watford are to me.
So who was Stoke?
I don't really care about them. They're just a weird, obscure team that kind of just trundle along. Actually, I'm jealous of them.
I was going to say this sour grapes.
They're so
boring.
there, aren't they?
And they stole Kabul from us, the bastards.
They're going to have a major say in the relegation fight. Not them involved specifically, but they've got to play. Well, they've got Palace on Saturday. Then in April they've got Swansea and Hull back to back. They've got to play us. They've got to play Leicester. So if they smash all of us, then they're going to have a major say in it. But the problem with Watford, yeah, they are middling. But if they take their eye off the ball and think, well, we can just coast it now, it's not beyond the realms of possibilities that they could fall down. And so if they lose to a couple. Just hypothetically, if they lose to a couple of us down there, they could be down there as well. I don't think they're in any danger at all. I think it's just the bottom six, the current bottom six. But you never know.
Well, they've won 2 of their last 10, and they lost a couple before that. And I don't know. They've got some. Well, I thought they were match winners. Like Igalo was so good last year, wasn't he? And he's completely dropped off a cliff. And Troy Deeney's a decent enough player. They've probably got enough to stay up. I mean, they've got 31 points at the moment. Really a win and a couple of draws, and they're probably going to be all right. I'd say 36, 37, and you're going to be in and around safety this year. I don't think you're going to need any more than 37, if I'm honest. I think the standard in the Premier League. It's one thing we've not covered yet. But, I mean, I think the standard from say 12th downwards is just crap in the Premier League. It's the best league in the world in terms of entertainment value, but the quality of football, the team down the bottom, you're not exactly watching exhilarating stuff. To be honest, you could almost take the top 8 teams out of the Premier League. The rest of them, any of them could go.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, mathematically, certainly. Just about. But no, I mean, for me, I'm not really. I mean, we'll move on to Burnley now, I suppose, but. On that note, what you're saying about the quality in the Premier League, I completely agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that, and it does have that reek of a low scoring season, doesn't it? I mean, but that's great news for us as it happens. I mean, we can't really look a gift horse in the mouth there, because what we want is for everybody to lose and for us to win, and that would be fantastic. That's all we need. Going on to Burnley, we will put Burnley in there. We've got Burnley. We're going on to Burnley. I don't even know where to start with this. I mean. Technically speaking, they're at the same level. Do you know what I mean? Same level as Watford, 31 points. Whether or not they're going to get dragged into this or not, I'm not convinced they are.
No chance. No chance.
Go on then, Tom.
Not a win in 5, though, Tom. They've lost their last couple. Maybe I'm grasping at straws. I don't think they'll go down. I don't think home form will keep.
I think for what? Well, it's not as if they haven't spent money. To be honest, actually, they've spent a fair amount. And if you look at the fixtures you're talking about, you've got to include in there the fact that they played against Chelsea and Liverpool. I think their Achilles heel is whenever they go away from home, they struggle to do well. And I mean,
guess who they've got way next though, Tom?
I know.
Do you remember a couple of years ago when QPR went all season and didn't win the away game, and then they come to the Stadium of Light and world class?
And you know what?
And they were decent against
totally
Liverpool.
Right. That's totally right. And the way, it's Sean Dyche's just built something good there, especially at their home ground. And just, they don't play anything fancy. They play exactly how Sunderland should be playing. They try to move the ball from the back, from the defence into attacking positions as quickly as they can. That's not long ball. That's called direct attacking football. And when they're at home, they're not worried. They're not afraid to do that. When they're away, it's a different matter. I don't know if they're overcomplicated. I don't know if that just kind of says go out and play, and he's just putting all of his time and effort into those home games. But you're right, it's against us next week, so it's going to be interesting to see will they turn up and give us a good spanking? Or, much like the theme of this season, will they be unable to actually get some points on the road?
Well, the thing, you look at Burnley's squad, and it's square pegs and square holes, isn't it? You look at every single player, they fit in that position, and when Sean Dyche changes it, he doesn't, like we do, shoehorn a right back in centre midfield or shoehorn a striker on the wing. He just picks the player from that position, puts him in. And regardless of if he's the best footballer in the world, they all know their job, they all fit that position, they all know the system, and that's why they'll be safe.
Spent well as well, haven't they? When you look at the players that they've bought. I mean, I think most Sunderland fans would have turned up their nose at Joey Barton when he became available from Rangers, but, I'm not saying he would have come here and been anything special. I think that's kind of the point with Burnley. You look at pretty much every player, bar one or two of the more quality players, you look at them and you think, if there were Sunderland players, they would be down the bottom of the table. I think they've bought the right characters for that team. They came up with a good work ethic and a good, ethos and all the rest of it, played the right way, really. And then they brought in Barton again, who was successful there last season. And they've brought in players like Jeff Hendricks, who, is another one who most people weren't sure about. And then he came to the Premier League and looked every bit of Premier League midfielder. So I'm a big admirer of them. I agree with what you said before. That's how Sunderland should be. If Sunderland go down, we'll get on to whether we all think that or not. But if we do go down next, I want us to look like that. I want us to play like that. I mean, I don't necessarily think we should be scouring for the cheapest of cheap players like Dyche had to do when he first went there. But I think that just the way they're set up and the play and the mentality of the players that he's got and how they approach games and how they approach home games more than anything. I mean, it's like Fortress Turf Moor, isn't it? Nobody can go there. It's unbelievable how well they've done at home this season. And for me, if we do go down, I want us to emulate that more than anything, because I really do admire the way they've just approached everything. Small club coming into the Premier League. We're not going to change the way we play. We're going to really, impart ourselves that way. And for me, if they stay up, that has to be Dyche manager of the season, because there can't be any other manager in that league who would have got that out of that group.
That's fair enough to say. I mean, we've touched on it already, but I suppose this is where it leads us to. So, all of that said, all of this wondrous praise for Burnley coming out of all of our mouths. Tom, what do you think's going to happen next Saturday?
We're doomed.
We're doomed.
We're doomed. I don't know. It's going to be a typical Sunderland. We're going to get a 1-1 draw. We'll walk away thinking, oh, well, Burnley are doing well this season, and really gain nothing from it. Unless we turn around, give a fantastic showing of ourselves, play to our strengths, defensively we look organised. Unless we do that and come away with a win, I think we just have to be properly disappointed and start to open our eyes and think, it's gone tits up this year. This year's been a culmination of just horrific mismanagement on all levels. And nobody's innocent is the frustrating thing. And the fans can't point the finger at anyone and say it's his fault. It's partially Moyes' fault. But then at the same time, thanks to Sam Allardyce, he had less time to prepare. And thanks to Ella Short, we've had sort of limited budgets for the last couple of years. And there's just so many things you can point at and say, that's shite, and that's part of the reason why we're shite, means that unless something miraculous happens, and we, like I say, turn on the magic and somehow thrash Burnley, we're in a very, very horrific situation. I talked earlier on about Hull, and the fact that if Hull go down, it could be goodbye. The same could be said for us. And it's just a frightening position to be in as a fan. I remember going down, back in the early 2000s and thinking, no, but we'll be fine because we'll come back in the next few years. I look at our squad and on paper, we have a better squad than Burnley. And I'd be willing to bet we pay a lot more money to the players who we have in comparison to Burnley. And yet, Burnley, the whole structure of the club is fantastic. They haven't overspent. They've been incredibly intelligent. The two chairmen over there have been absolutely fantastic in the way they've run the club. And financially, there was a report out recently, they have one of the highest one of the highest turnover growth percentages in Europe. So just looking at our club in comparison to someone like Burnley, who don't have the stadium and don't have the Jermain Defoe or Adnan Januzajs, but yet they have the likes of Jeff Hendrick and Sam Vokes week in, week out producing the goods. I just want to bang my head against the wall and think, what's the fucking point, like? And I'd love to know what the other lads think. But for me, this season, and you can see how divided the fans are at each other's throats. It's not Moyes' fault, it's Short's fault. It's not Short's fault, it's Moyes' fault. It's Big Sam's fault, it's the FA's fault. We cannot come to an agreement between us what has gone wrong. And because we can't do that, the club want this strength through unity. Piss off, will you? How can you have that when there's so many things going wrong? Just blindly follow the club and think, it'll be alright because like David Moyes said, we'll get some luck somewhere. Nowhere.
This is it.
We've been in this position for years, and for the club to do so little about it, for me, is a pure disgrace, in all honesty. Absolute disgrace. And yes, they've kept the season tickets at the same price. Fantastic. But ultimately, we're in a less economically developed area in the UK. Like, you put them up any higher, you're not going to get in attendance.
Yeah, that's true.
So, for me, it's just the last few years have been a culmination of absolute garbage. And in my opinion, I'll leave it at this, I think we're down. I don't think there's going to be another miracle. I think we'll go down, and we need to do some serious soul searching this summer. Otherwise, we're just gonna sort of slowly trickle into the lower leagues of English football.
Damning, very damning. But I'd agree with most of what you say. Actually, in particular, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that I think we're knackered. I think this is finally it for us. In recent years, I think that particularly what you're saying about how the fan base is divided. Obviously, we talk about this quite often. It's something that, comes up sometimes at the Roker Report. For me, what I can gather is that people want sycophants. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the fans want sycophants. They want people to tell them to ignore the facts, to ignore the miserable reality of what is happening and what has been happening for a long time at this club, regardless of whose fault it is. Do you know what I mean? It's still happening. We're still getting worse and worse. Bad decisions are being made constantly. There are like square pegs going in round holes, or rather not. You know, and that has been happening time and time again. Financially, we've been hemorrhaging money from all accounts. I dread to think what the actual final reality of our financial situation is. Like, everything that they can't hide, everything that they can't tuck away, and they don't have to release as public information. I think that figure would probably shock us, and it would shock a lot of football fans as well. Do you know what I mean? I think it's certainly on par with like the higher earning clubs and the higher spending clubs. Do you know, without a doubt, unaccountably so. We shouldn't be anywhere near them because we don't have anything near the results to prove that we need to be spending that money or that we can justify spending that money.
And it's so funny. Jermain Jenas gives his 2 cents on the whole matter, and you know that tweet when he's like, we said that we had the 6th highest gate in the league, and he's like, but you don't have that after 60 minutes when you go 2-0 down, do you?
He's a fucking plum, isn't he?
Absolute moron. Like, if anybody in the mainstream media actually looked at what's gone on at our club, they'd be absolutely horrified at the levels of mismanagement. Margaret Byrne as CEO, you know, Gary Hutchison, for all, like, he's worked his way up, he's a local lad, all that wonderful stuff. End of the day, he didn't deliver any commercial growth, and that was his job. So, why is he in that position? Jed McNamee, for example, he leaves this year, and then people start to question his role. What's he been doing the last few years? You know, there's just so many questions and so many fingers that can be blamed here, there, and everywhere. And for some reason, it's only us talking about it. Jermain Jenas isn't acknowledging that Ella Short has pumped money into the club by all means. However, he hasn't written that debt off as people. He's converted it to equity. He can still take that money back.
And will take that money back.
It's going to be difficult for him, don't get me wrong. He can't just demand it back. However, theoretically, he can reclaim that money. So he hasn't done us really any favours off the bat. Yes, he's eased the burden of debt somewhat. But ultimately, we owe half the money to him. So what's the point in it, you know? And it's such a piss take when people like Jenas jump in and give the 2 cents, and we see fans saying, Sunderland being shite, I can't wait for them to go down. Bottom feeders being hanging in by their fingernails the last few years. But just look at the way the club's being run, and look at the fans who've given so much time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, and money, hard-earned money to this club. and we've been let down. There's no other way to put it.
Well, this is it, and
let down.
that sad reality is what a lot of the fans don't want, and you can understand it from a human perspective because you don't want to be told bad news. No one loves to hear bad news every day. Do you know what I mean? Particularly when the passion in the North East, the passion in Sunderland for the club it's immense. It's fantastic. It's laudable without doubt. It is an amazing passion that you rarely see, and as you say, in mainstream media, that rarely gets touched upon. Do you know what I mean? It only comes from the sports personalities that have played for us. You know, really, that's the sort of people who do it. And that's, I mean, you get the basic thing from the player when he signs on. Oh yeah, it's a fantastic club, fantastic facilities. But when they've been at the club for a few years and they leave and then they turn around and say, you know what, that is one of the greatest atmospheres ever. That is one of the best fan bases. I mean, obviously you're talking about people waxing lyrical like Niall Quinn, like Peter Reid, you know what I mean? Things like that. Well, obviously they're going to say that, but they're not just heroes. The fan base, they're heroes to these players. They make it worth their while. They make them remember this for the rest of their lives, you know what I mean? And that is the shocking thing. We don't get anywhere near enough credit. The people who, as you say, spend that hard-earned money, which isn't bloody easy to earn right now, do you know what I mean? Compared to where all these other teams are, do you know, especially London-based clubs. I hate that in particular. People like Jermain Jenas, you know what I mean, who reside in London, turn around and saying that, oh, they're walking away, or they're useless, they're crap fans. Well, what the fuck would he know about it? What would he know about it? No one in London could even comprehend the sort of lifestyle that some of these people have had to go through, the sort of what it really means to truly eat, breathe, sleep, drink football. Do you know what I mean? When there's a lot of other shit going on, there has been for decades. It goes far deeper than sport. And yeah, that's shocking.
It is that because you look at the mainstream media, and it's not just Jenas, it's the likes of, I've mentioned him before, it's Chris Sutton's just as bad. You've got many of these lads, and you look at this, in inverted commas, crisis Arsenal are going through, and the amount of press and the amount of sympathy they seem to be getting. Our poor Arsenal fans, you know, they've had to go 10 years without a league trophy. Just fuck off. Like, why are their fans? They're allowed to have banners and cool, but our fans leave after seeing dross served up week after week after week, and yet, you know, they're called worse than shite. It's absolutely not on.
Bang on, Jim. You know, because in the same day that Jenas put that tweet out, he was on BBC Sport talking about how Arsenal fans had the right to show their displeasure at Wenger. And this was all in the same day. He was saying this about Arsenal fans the same day that he was slating Sunderland fans on Twitter for leaving games early. And I just kind of think, like, you're a nobody, mate. You're a total nobody. Your opinion should mean shit all, but it does because you're on BBC TV and you're on the radio and this, that and the other. And he's just one of many, and he's just Mr. Soundbite. Sutton's another. You know, Mickey Gray's another, Mickey Quinn's another. They're on the national radio and on these pundits who've played. Yeah, you've played the game, but you know absolutely frig all about what it's like to be a Sunderland fan. And for me, we aren't given enough of that in the press. And our local press pretend everything's all right, which doesn't help things at all. Because, you know, it was spelled out on. I'm going to mention it, but I was listening to the Wise Men Say podcast last week, and I like Nick Barnes, but he mentioned that the reason that the right questions aren't asked to David Moyes. This is just one example, but the reason that the right questions aren't asked to David Moyes about real issues is because they're scared of, you know, losing the relationship with him. They're scared of losing the off the record stuff that they're told. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought, well, that's where we are, aren't we? That's where we are at, and that's why we have an unfair representation. I know we're going a bit off tangent. It was ultimately about the relegation running and what have you, but it's all part of a bigger picture, isn't it? It's like we are bottom of the Premier League. We've won 5 games. Also, we've got a minus 26 goal difference, 19 points collected. We started the first 10 games of the season without a win. We were told from game day number 2 that we're in a, you know, so we have the right to get off our arses and leave a stadium, and I don't blame anybody who does that. I didn't do it. I stayed right at the end last week, but I'm not going to blame someone for doing it because it shows that there's more than just bad results at play here. People are totally disillusioned, and, you know, the more that people like us, I guess, or any fan can get out there and say something about what's going on and express their opinion on how bad things are at this club, then the more people should take notice, because people like Jenas are giving the wrong message out, pretty much. He's got a big Twitter audience who oh, look what Jermain Jenas has put out, son, ha ha ha, retweet that, you know what I mean? Totally ignoring what's actually... Come on, man. We all know it. It seems like we're the only fans who are talking about it, Sunderland fans. Everybody else is just like, oh, well, there's Sunderland going down the pan, they deserve it.
Well, this is
It
it.
pisses me off.
And touching on that again, I mean, we've all spoken about it now, but that attitude of requiring a sycophantic outlook, that attitude of being told that everything's okay when it isn't, you know, that's what really gets me the most. That is the sort of bury your head in the sand, cowardly, weak reaction to something awful. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's not happening. Stick your fingers in your ears. La 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 la. It's still happening, mate. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, fair enough. We don't want to talk about it all the time. You don't want to hear that your mum's dead. Do you know what I mean? Every day we'll keep bringing it up with you. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Oh, your fucking dog's died. Do you know what I mean? We'll keep bringing that up. That's fair enough. No one wants to hear bad news all the time. But when it comes to actually finishing the argument about whether or not we're going down, or settling the argument, settling where we stand, as Tom said earlier, being divided and getting rid of that division and just saying, right, look, I mean, for me personally now, I said it recently, like I've lost my hope, and a few lads said that, you know what I mean, the hope that kills you, they've lost that. They've lost even the hope that kills you. And it's just like, that's how I feel about it now. I have no illusions, or disillusions rather, delusions about Sunderland staying in the Premier League. I mean, yeah, for me, this would be the miracle. For me, the last few seasons, the miraculous Great Escape, they weren't really that miraculously done. I mean, yeah, it seemed like they were going to be, because we'd had a shit season again, and we'd spent poorly and things like that. We had some bad injuries, but that was completely different to what this has been all season. This has been from start to finish. Look, we can't do this anymore. Do you know what I mean? This has all come to a head. This is the culmination, as Tom said earlier, this is the culmination of years of mismanagement at every level and poor decisions. And it really bothers me that fans can't sit there and go, yeah, you're right. You know, and just admit that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love for us to win every game now. Stay up, do you know what I mean? That's fine. Do whatever you want to me, call me every name under the sun, that'd be brilliant. But now I'm not upset about the idea of it happening anymore. I'm sort of, in a way, I'm sort of looking, I'm not going to say I'm looking forward to the Championship, right? Because that doesn't ring true. I don't think anyone looks forward to relegation or the mockery or anything like that comes with it, the inherent humiliation and just, again, the grim reality of that. But I'm not going to whinge about it anymore. And I think it's like we were saying, we're the ones who are talking about it. And when you talk about it, it's like grief counselling, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's acceptance. We've reached the final stage of grief counsel, of going through the grieving process, or I have certainly. I've reached acceptance. Like, now I'm okay with this. If we go down, I'm okay with this. If it has to happen, it has to happen. I hope we do well. It's not going to stop us. People have written about it already. It's not going to stop us from loving the club. It's not going to stop us from writing about it. It's not going to stop us from talking about it or supporting it. But at the same time, it is a shame for me. It's a big shame to have Sunderland come down after this, because it's been fight after fight after fight, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, one last throw of the dice, one last throw of the dice, one last throw of the dice every fucking season. Maybe this time we'll get it right. Maybe this time we'll reach that hallowed ground of mid-table mediocrity. Do you know what I mean? Where we win half, we lose half. It doesn't really matter. We draw some. It's all good. And that's a shame for me, because it feels like this fight has been going, well, it feels like it's been going for 10 rounds. Do you know what I mean? And just, it feels like we're getting beaten at the death. It feels like that. It feels like, you know what I mean? You've been holding off a brilliant team, like all 95 minutes, you know, and they bang one in the 96th minute. That's what this will feel like to me if we get relegated. Which I think we will, by the way. That's my prediction. I think we're getting relegated. I don't think we're going to make it out. What about you, James?
Well, I've done the predictor. I've done it a couple of times. I mean, I've got Borough going down bottom on 27. I've then got Hull 19th on 35. I've got us in 18th on 36, and Palace just staying up on the skin of the teeth on goal difference on 36. But interesting, I had them on the final day of the season. I had both us and Palace on 36 points, and they're away at United, I think, and we're obviously away at Chelsea. So if my results were to go and we managed to get a point on the last day against Chelsea, we'd stay up. But I've got us going down on goal difference, and I was being fairly optimistic with some of the wins as well.
Being generous.
Yeah, maybe.
What about you, Tom? Predictions?
I don't think the bottom three will change at all. it'll stay as it is. I think we'll be bottom. I see effort. I just don't see fight. There's different. There's a difference there, and I don't see fight from the players. I see them running around, and I appreciate they are, but I just don't see the fight. I think Palace will stay by the skin of the teeth. They've got a lot of quality in that squad still, but I don't see a way out for us, Borough or Hull. I really don't, unless Borough start finding goals somewhere. Because they have it, like we already mentioned in the show, defensively that they're pretty decent, to be honest. So I don't see it changing too much. Maybe Borough overtake Hull, but it really would take us. I don't want to say a miracle because we use this word all the time, but the whole season would need to take a 360 turn now for us to escape the clutches of doom. Unfortunately.
Fair enough. What about you, Gav? Predictions, buddy?
I'm gonna go with us finishing bottom. I think I hate to say it, and I've been proven wrong from this position a number of times by Sunderland. I agree with Tom. The big difference between effort and fight, and fight is what we are lacking. I mean, again, I've been made to look a fool in recent years when I've wrote us off and we've stayed up. I think that players like Kirchhoff, Catamol, and Anichebe could make a huge difference to the results that we get. But ultimately, we've probably got to win over half of our games that we have left. 8 of the 11 that we do have left are against teams in the bottom half of the league, which is a huge positive when you compare it to the teams that Palace have to play, for instance. But ultimately, again, it's all right saying, we've got all these teams to play. You've got to win some of them, and it's going to take a huge effort. So I've got us down as bottom. I do think Middlesbrough will go down because they don't score enough goals. The manager just seems to be a bit like Moyes, doesn't he? Just resigned to what's going on. And then third bottom, I'm going with Palace. I think the running's difficult. I don't think that the players that they've got are going to get, I don't think Allardyce will get the reaction from them that he needs. And I think Hull and the new manager and the players that they've brought in have created a massive spark. And I do think that they'll scrape up. I think they're going to get enough wins. They look capable of winning games, which I don't think any of the other 3 teams I've mentioned, Palace, Borough, Sunderland, I don't think we any of those teams look capable of putting a string of results together. Where Hull, they just seem to be a bit of a dark horse. They've got a new manager who seems to know what he's doing. So yeah, that's my bottom 3, and I think probably curtains for us in the Premier League again. But I don't like it to be negative, but that's just the way it is. We've seen nothing this season really to suggest that we would be capable of going on a run of 5 or 6 wins out of 11. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that Hull, I'd agree with you in that sense. I think Hull are going to pull it off somehow. I think they're going to get a couple of good wins out. I think they'll do well for the remainder of the season, or at least comparatively well with what they've got to deal with. I can see us finishing above Middlesbrough, and I can see Palace getting dragged in. Yeah, so I can see us, Middlesbrough and Palace, with Middlesbrough at the bottom and Palace on 18th, and us sandwiched nicely on 19th. That's pretty much all I can see, because I don't see, as I said before, I don't see any way out for Palace. And for me, it's Moyes. For us, we've spoken about a lot of things, and there are a lot of places and things you can blame, but for me, when I look at Moyes, I don't see that happening. I don't see that run. I don't see that energy. I don't see a connection there or anything like that. It's like Tom said earlier, I see them running around. I also appreciate that, but I can't see any fight. They've got no heart to them. I think it takes a leader to give you heart, and I don't think we have that. Tom as well, he's had a nip off, but he left his predictions for us. Walshy anyway did. And he's got us to finish on 33 points. I think he's going to beat Watford, West Ham, Bournemouth and Swansea, and draw with Borough and Burnley. So that'd be nice. Where that leaves us, I don't know. 33 points will probably still leave us relegated.
Yeah. I would presume down, especially when you look at the rest of the table already. Burnley and, for instance, are on 31, Watford are on 31, Bournemouth are on 30. So you're talking about those teams needing less than a win now to stay safe. If that would be, and I think 33 is probably not going to be enough. I think if you kind of disregard Sunderland in that table, just forget that we're even there, which would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just kind of forget we're even there, and you look at the rest of the teams down there. Pretty much everybody needs around 5 wins, so we are going to have to top that if we're going to even scrape into 17.
And I can't see that.
It's just, it's too much. It's too much. I don't think we've got enough quality to it.
It's too much. Well, yeah, that's about it. Sorry to leave you on another depressing note, but that's what reality does to you. Sorry about that. Not our fault, really. Just say it. Hashtag just say it from the Roker Rapport. Thanks for joining me tonight, lads, and thank you to the audience for listening. We'll be back with another episode, usual time, next week. Hopefully it'll be fantastic news and we'll have turned over Burnley. I won't hold my breath for that, but yeah, we can have a little bit of hope still. We'll have something to keep us going and have some nice sweet dreams instead of nightmares for the rest of the week. So yeah, this is the Roker Rapport signing off. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on the Acast app. Take care. Bye bye.